how come? Yeah, but wow, that was the wow. Can I redo? I have to redo that. That was horrible. Time out 1 second. Welcome to your friendly neighborhood atheist. That's a great way to start a show. As you can see, I am rather smooth. I definitely had my practice at this. Not at all, but we do need
exceptional.
Yeah, thanks. By the way, how you doing, Christian?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Hey, introduce yourself to everyone.
I'm Christian James Watkins. I'm an atheist dude. I debate religion and politics and such, and I have a Facebook. Just look me up, and I'm excited to take some calls.
Yeah, me too. Now we just need them. I'm sitting here patiently waiting for hopefully Dean Meadows to call in, so you two can finish what was started last week. If you're watching this video now, make sure you like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and if you know any theist callers, I guess we'll take any callers at this point. 951 engage 0.
Absolutely.
So, Christian, I hear you're going to be on the Damn Show tomorrow as well.
Yes, Chris is having me on again for my second appearance. I'm super, super, super excited to be on, hopefully to talk about a lot of productive things regarding the community of atheism in general. And I'm super excited to be on. Like always, Chris is awesome, and it's always a pleasure.
Ooh, speaking of which, I see Trina in the audience. Trina, you should call right now and share your ghost story with everyone.
A ghost story, really?
She has a ghost story. We went back and forth on this for a while. So Trina, call in.
That would be awesome. I love a good ghost story.
You would think you just put a number up and people would magically start calling, but that's
you would think so, yeah.
Last week it was like call, and this week not so much. But we will be back here later tonight at 8 p.m. On What the Puck with V. LaBianca, and we'll be talking about cancel culture. And then tomorrow I have the Death with Dignity Roundtable featuring Dave Warnock, Sassy Heathen. I forgot the rest of the people. Wasn't prepared to keep talking at this point.
Yeah, Dave is awesome. I've watched a lot of Dave's stuff, and he does a fantastic job. Let's see, I'm absolutely itching to get some calls, and the reason why I actually called in during the first show that you did of this and talked with you and Rick. And last time, I think a lot of the reasons why there's a lack of calls is because last time our friend Dean spent the first 45 minutes of the segment just talking to you. So by the time he was done, there was already a laundry list of people who wanted to call in.
That's a good point. So, most of the people that were calling in were frustrated with some of Dean's comments.
I wouldn't know who that would be, but
there we go. We have our first caller coming.
Okay.
And hopefully it's not someone trolling us. Hey, you're on the air with Christian and Ethan. How you doing?
Hi, I'm Puck.
Oh, hey, Puck.
Oh, Puck, how you doing?
See, I know that Ethan has my number saved. He knows what it is, so I have to call from my Google Voice number, which I'm sure you will promptly forget after this, right?
That's correct. No one can see your phone number but me.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a suggestion for not just this particular call-in show, but any other call-in show that we do in the future, because I know I'm scheduled to do one of these in the future, right?
Next Tuesday, you will be my co-host. I'm
That's
still
right.
surprised
Okay.
you agreed to it.
Yeah, so am I. Okay, so I present a challenge for you guys here. While I leave room for the possibility that somebody out there is actually wanting to call about this, I seriously doubt that anybody who talks to you guys about atheism is wanting to talk to you guys about the semantic definition of what is an atheist. I think most people would rather talk about how you answer questions in light of not having a God be the answer to the question. So my challenge to you guys, should you choose to accept it, is to make sure that the conversation never goes there. Don't say, atheism is only the lack of belief in God. I understand that there are some people who need the correction, but most people aren't here to talk about that. And it serves to derail the conversation rather than to lead conversation forward to a more productive place.
Christian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, there are some people, some theists, who would do that. I generally like to ascribe the best of intentions until demonstrated otherwise. So when someone calls in and asks a question about atheism, I generally answer it. And if they start pressing with dishonest tactics, then I'll jump in. But as far as just general questions, I'm nowhere near saturated enough to start rejecting simple questions based on a lack of time available. So I would say that I get your point, Puck, that there is a lot of dishonest actors in that way. But I talk to a lot of great theists like Larry the Christian and Lucas, and they have a lot of great questions. So I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Say Larry because he's in the audience right now.
Is he?
Yes, Larry is in the audience right now.
Oh, hi, Larry. Oh, there he is. Yeah.
That's nice. He gets a plug. That's awesome.
Larry was the first.
I get where you're coming from, and there are a lot of conversations in which this is going to come up, where someone will assert that you believe something that you don't. In which case, it does help to bring this up. Yeah, but it drives me up the wall sideways when a conversation gets derailed because we got to nitpick definitions now. I would rather get past the definitions and talk about what we actually all came here to talk about.
I would agree with that totally.
Yeah. What he said.
Well, this conversation went nowhere. Larry, give us a call. Yeah, or who has Trina? Trina, you. This would be a wonderful place for you to call. I think you and Christian could go rounds about certain things.
I agree. I would love for Trina to call in and talk to Christian very much. I think that would be a pleasant conversation.
I would be happy.
Pleasant might be overstating a little bit, but it'd be a lot of fun for the viewers. All right, you kids have fun. Enjoy your call-in show.
You too. And we do have a theist caller on the line.
Oh.
So here you go. This is going to be a good one. This will be a good test if I can figure out how this works.
I'm thinking Larry or Dean.
You are on the air with Christian and Ethan. How you doing?
What's up, guys?
Oh, hey. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, in direct response to Puck's phone call, I'd like to ask a very simple question and hopefully get a pretty simple answer. How would you define atheism? How would each of you define atheism? And how does that particular perspective on life, I won't use the word worldview, how does that particular perspective on life lend itself to the way that you interact with the world?
You want me to go first, or?
Yeah, please.
I usually
so you're here, so I would like you to talk as much as possible.
I usually define atheism as a lack of belief in God. It's generally accepted by the majority of atheists, and I think that's fine. I don't really see an issue with the definition there. As far as how it interacts with my worldview, I wouldn't say that it informs it directly, but there are certain parts of a lack of belief in God that affects my view towards, addressing theist points or praying or worshiping. I don't do any of those things because of my atheism. So it certainly does have effects on my worldview, but I wouldn't say that it's a direct informant of how I answer, to other questions. That's more my skepticism and stuff like that. But atheism is really just a single stance on a single issue. So,
what do you think of that, Larry?
And just for clarification, the single stance on the single issue is that the answer to the proposition God exists is false, or I'm not convinced.
Yeah, so there's a proposition, right, which is the theist will say, I believe in God. And a atheist will say, I have a lack of belief in that God claim. It's not sufficient for me. So we're not saying that there is no God or there could never be any gods. That would be more of an anti-theist or a non-theist. But as far as atheists go, at least how I would define it and how I believe Ethan would define it as well, is just a lack of belief in a God.
Got it. Okay.
I can feel you thinking
Ethan?
through the phone, Larry. I know you got more.
No, listen, I'm here to foster productive conversation. I'd like to know your answer.
Oh, yeah. I just define it as a lack of belief. I just don't have a much longer explanation for it than that. Outside of, I mean, it affected the way I view the world, but I wouldn't say it comes in day to day with how I analyze things.
Okay. So what does, for both of you then, I guess, what does kind of inform the way that you you interact with other propositions? Is it just purely skepticism and empiricism? Are you guys, I'm sorry, there's the generator, so I apologize for the background noise.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay.
Is there a like functional naturalism, scientism? Are there any isms other than atheism?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. Skepticism, methodological naturalism, general epistemology, the lack of fallaciousness. These are all things that go into how I evaluate claims. But as far as, political worldviews, progressive, that's generally something I'd apply to myself. But I don't know. I think labels are a bit less interesting than the actual ideas that we discuss. So if you have a question on a particular point that we hold as far as the ideas, you're welcome to. But as far as labels go, it's not super relevant to me what I call myself. It's more relevant to what I believe and what I profess belief in.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, are there any line in the sand kind of issues where this is the belief that I hold, and there is very little that anyone can offer that would sway my particular opinion on it?
Oh, slavery is wrong.
Okay. That's a good one. I'm all for that one.
Yeah, I don't think that the forced ownership of people as property is a moral action.
Okay.
I guess also, for example, I don't think that treating people differently because of their race is a good thing. I think it's immoral to do so.
All right. And then, so I guess what is, and I'm going to try not to commit the sin that Puck mentioned, but so you brought up the idea of a moral claim. So where do you guys find true north on your moral compass? Like what dictates moral oughts?
So just basically, what's my moral system?
Yeah, I mean, where does that find its roots?
Sure, axiomatic humanism. Do you need more information than that, or?
If you could just expand, maybe not only for my well-being, so that I understand better, but for maybe the people that are listening as well.
Yeah, it's basically the well-being suffering calculus, but we add in that the involuntary violation of someone's will is also something that we would not want to achieve.
Okay. All right. So got it. Well-being, suffering, and then adding in the additional.
The involuntary imposition of somebody's will.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool. All right. Well, now I have better definition, so I can go and do my research and I could call
out of
back.
curiosity, Larry, what is your moral system? Out of curiosity.
My moral system?
Yeah.
I think that the objective moral values given by the God of the Bible is a good starting point.
Like slavery?
I don't think that a good case for the God of the Bible condoning slavery can be made. So,
Okay. Would you like me to make one?
I'm absolutely diametrically opposed to slavery. So,
Would you like me to make a case that the God of the Bible is endorsing slavery directly?
actually, right now I'm just letting out my dog. So, not particularly. I just was helping you guys fill in the call thing. It was not my intention to spend 45 minutes on the phone with you guys. I was just trying to help you along.
I appreciate it, Larry. We do have another. Well, I don't know what caller this is. We'll find out. I don't have a screener yet. So trigger. Or anyways, Larry, thank you for calling in.
You're very welcome. Have a good show, guys.
You too.
Yeah. Bye, Larry.
Bye.
So I would like to give everyone a fair warning. I do not have a call screener, so I do have this auto-generated screener. But if someone doesn't fill it out, I don't know. So I am going to bring this person on, but trigger warning, I do not know this person. So
Oh boy.
I know. I'm going to be ready just in case. Hi, 9MM.
Hello, boys.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
I am fabulous. You wanted me to call.
Oh,
I'm calling.
Oh, Trina, how's it going?
Trina.
Hi.
So, can you share your lovely, convincing ghost story with Mr. Christian Watkins for me?
Okay, first of all, it's not a ghost story. And second of all, you're the only one that doesn't hear it. So I was recording my daughter with my cell phone, and she was maybe 2. And she used to, her whole life, she used to just talk to people that weren't there. You know, we would always just joke, oh, she's talking to the ghost in the house. And there's a recording that I have on my phone that I captured. Now, mind you, I had my phone held out in front of me, about 2 foot in front of me, just recording her babbling, talking nonsense. And when I played it back, you could hear a voice say, don't touch. And it's a man's voice. It's very clear. It says, don't touch. And then she gets all freaked out. She says, ew, boo-boos, go, get back, get back. And she turns around. She sees that I'm recording her, and I'm just laughing. And I'm like, I caught you talking to yourself. So that's it. It's not like some huge ghost story like I saw somebody standing in front of me, nothing like that.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say, hello, Trina, by the way. It's good to meet you.
Hello, good to meet you.
So I guess the first question I'd ask is, what conclusions have you drawn from that story beyond the actual content of the story?
The only conclusion I can think of is that it was a voice. I don't know whose voice. I don't know if it was a ghost. I don't know if it was some guy from some parallel universe. Who knows? I really don't know. All I know is it wasn't my voice. There's no one else in the house. It's not like a board squeak. It wasn't some, something wrong with my phone, because it's very clear, don't touch. It's not like a sound. It's very clear, a man's voice saying don't touch, which was a little creepy, but I never was like,
it sounds pretty creepy. Yeah.
Shit like that. It wasn't anything crazy like that.
Here's what I would say, Trina. I don't think that the story that you said, I don't want to discount it in any way. I'm willing to totally believe you on the actual logistics of the story. The only thing that I would take issue with is if you were to try to make an assertion beyond what we actually have in the evidence, and you're not doing that, and that's totally fine with me. I would say that if you were to positively assert that it is a ghost or it is a god or whatever, we would have an issue. But as far as just making an observation, I don't see anything wrong with what you've done. It's just describe the experience, and regardless of the efficacy or regardless of the actual content, as long as you're not making conclusions that don't necessarily follow, I have no issue with what you're saying in your story.
Yeah, no, I would never say that it was definitely a ghost, because I don't know if it was a ghost. I don't know if it was some alien being that was beamed down and just couldn't see him. He was just using his voice. I don't know any of that. So I'm not saying it was definitely this or definitely that. It was just weird, and I got it on camera, and I was really excited. That was it.
Trina is also, I don't meet many of these. She would be defined as a hard atheist, and would stand
very
by, yes, there is no God, correct?
Very.
Her
interesting. Yeah. How would you demonstrate that, Trina?
I asked her the same thing.
Well, I asked her the same thing. I really can't demonstrate. All I can say is I just think it's all been made up. Gods have all just been made up to make people feel better about dying, and I've never felt that there was actually a God. It's just, I think it's all just a bunch of crap. But I don't down people for believing it. You want to believe in that? You want to make yourself feel better? Be my guest. If that's going to make you a better human, by all means. But I don't need to believe in some make-believe creature that's always watching me to be a good person.
Trina, let me ask you this. Are you able to tag me in that video again in a way that I could play it on the air for everyone? That would be really cool.
I don't know. I don't know how I could do it. You shared it on your page, so I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to the video and tag you again.
Yeah,
so you
if
can
you
see
can,
it, but I'm not sure.
before this show ends.
Just quickly, Ethan, the reason why I'm not a hard atheist or like a God does not exist atheist is I think that both possibility and impossibility have to be demonstrated. And I wouldn't even know how to begin to falsify every single God claim that exists.
Well, you could do that with a lot of things. That's like saying, well, dragons don't exist. Well, you can't prove that they don't exist. You also can't prove that they do.
Correct.
Prove that something does not exist. So it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah, which is why I don't say dragons don't exist. I say we have no available good reasons to believe that dragons, in fact, do exist.
Still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I was trying to go on my computer to see if I can find that video. It's going to take me a while. I can't promise you anything, but I'll try.
Okay. Trina, thanks for calling in. If you can tag me in that before the end of the show, or actually at some point, that would be awesome.
I sure will. Have fun,
nice
guys.
Talking to you.
Bye, Trina.
Bye.
Bye. All right, I have got a good one for you next, Christian.
Is it Dean? Please say it's Dean.
No, it's not Dean. Dean is busy with his kids, but I would like to welcome Richard Graves, His Imperial Majesty. How you doing?
I know Richard. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep, you are on.
Yeah, I think.
All right. Well, Ethan, first of all, let me say that it's nice that you have to call in. I called in and I got your friendly neighborhood atheist with a smile, so that sounded pretty good. I'm glad you got this going for the phone calls. And I was calling. I came in on the discussion, I guess, last part that you were having with Larry when everyone was talking about morality and where people get their moral center from. And you guys have made a claim about, what was it, axiomatic humanism? Am I correct?
That's what I said. Yeah, it's not what Ethan said. It's what I said.
And I would have to posit that that would be absolutely incorrect. And what I'm saying
Wait,
as
what?
far as that worldview and philosophy, well, the reality of the situation in the United States, I don't care if you're a believer or a non-believer, Christian, Jewish, atheist, Satanist, whatever. Our moral center in our country, in our society and culture is predicated on puritanical standards from Christianity when these colonies were established. This is where the rule of law originates from here, mimicking English common law. And we get our moral standards from our culture more than anything else. We can say we
Richard,
get.
could I interrupt you just a moment? I just want to ask something quickly.
My basic assertion is moral standards for any society throughout history and time or place are predicated on those standards of that society, which are predicated sometimes on religious beliefs, sometimes on philosophical ideas. But in our country, the reality of the situation, whether you believe in God or not, is inconsequential. Whether God exists or not is inconsequential to the reality that it is the Puritan way of thinking that established a lot of the societal and cultural norms that guide our ideas and feelings towards certain issues being moral or immoral.
So, Richard, when I say that my moral view is axiomatic in the sense that it's axiomatic humanism, I'm not making the assertion that all of society uses axiomatic humanism. I'm simply describing the way that I evaluate moral claims.
Well, basically, you're saying that it is the method upon which you evaluate moral claims, not the source of the morality that you have.
So what I'm saying to you is when I look at a question like, is slavery wrong? Or should women have equal rights? I look at it through the lens of axiomatic humanism. And if you want to make a case that there's puritanic cultural pressure in this country towards certain values, I may even agree with you. But the fact of the matter is my belief system, as far as morality, is predicated on axiomatic humanism as much as I possibly can make it. If you have an example of something that I believe that is puritanic in nature, then please give an example.
Well, I'm sure you believe murder is wrong. And let me explain why I would say this. You believe murder is wrong, as most people in our country do. The absolute going up and just stabbing somebody for no reason, I would think you would agree that would be a wrong action. And
Yes,
I would not.
And I base that on my axiomatic humanism. Correct.
Well, I think that you are not fully appreciating the social psychology upon which you've grown up in our country. All the different forces acting on you psychologically, sociologically, and culturally as you grow up before you even get to the point of developing your own way of trying to come to conclusions. You already have a preset group of suppositions that are presented in you as you grow up in a family, as you grow up in a household, as you grow up in a society, as you go to school every day. There are things that are shaping how you think. All right. And don't get me wrong, we don't all think exactly alike, because we do get older and we do come into our own philosophies and our own ways of analyzing and addressing the world. But if there is a societal norm, and that societal norm you fall into, and it's as if you were
like
born.
I said, I'm going to need an example. Because
Right.
just asserting that I fall into a societal norm isn't in fact a demonstration of that claim.
It's not a demonstration, it's a statement of fact. Just like saying water.
It's not, though, unless you provide any substantiation.
That is a prima facie argument. It's a prima facie statement, and to argue
So
it,
it's not prima facie, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because right now, Richard, you're making a claim that my values and culture can be explained by puritanic roots. I'm not even disputing that claim. I'm just asking you for an example of why that's the case in my situation, since that's what you asserted. Now, I would like a demonstration of why that's true, independent of you just reasserting that it's true.
Were you born in the United States of America, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Were you born in the Midwest, or what region were you born in?
Wisconsin.
Okay, so you're born in the Midwest, the United States of America. Did you attend public school?
I did, yeah.
Private school? Yes or no?
Public school.
Okay. So you do not believe, at face value, that going through those, just being born in the Midwest with the basic Midwestern standard of values, that going to public school in the Midwest, all right, how old are you? About in your 40s or 30s?
I'm 18.
I'm just guessing. Oh, well, you're 18. You're a youngster. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you're really fresh. If you're 18 years old, nothing against 18-year-olds. There's a lot of brilliant 18-year-olds, and you seem to be very intelligent and very brilliant yourself. And I like hearing that with young people. I like the fact that you're thinking. I don't care if you're a believer or non-believer. The fact that you're thinking about things, I really appreciate, and I'm glad to hear that. But at 18 years old, all right, you have just came out of the initial indoctrination process of a country, all right, to indoctrinate you to believe, to be patriotic. And I'm not saying that in some type of Trumpian way, but you're taught history in school in a curriculum in a way to actually make you believe America is basically decent and basically the best country in the world, because that's an indoctrination process. Every country does it. All right. If you were born in Russia, you're going to hear stories about the Soviet Union and things like that to give you a certain
Richard,
feeling about yourself as society.
Could I cut in for just a moment, Richard?
Well, I just want to finish up. With you being born in the Midwest, with you going to public school, all right, with you being raised in a family, was anyone in your family religious at all?
Yeah.
Okay. If you were to go out and punch your neighbor, would your parents have disapproved?
Yes. Yeah.
So you had an expectation, you had an expectation of behavior predicated on what your parents expected of you, I'm sure, as you were growing up. until you became a young man and more independent of yourself. Their opinion of what you did, your teacher's opinion of what you did when you were between the grades of kindergarten to the 8th grade was very important to you. I'm not saying that these things are the only things that define you, but these are foundational in every person in the country. And when there's someone that comes outside of that from a different worldview, if a person's raised in Japan or raised even in a society as similar to us as the United Kingdom, there are certain subtle differences predicated on their worldview as far as what was input in them as they grow into maturity. Now that you're 18, all right, I'm sure, hopefully you're going to university because you're very bright. You're a very bright kid, and I would love to see you go deeper into your philosophical thought. But at the end of the day, all of us, whether we want to believe it or not, this is the reality of the situation. This is why we operate with each other the way that we do. All right.
Okay, Richard, I'm definitely going to stop here just because I have to respond to a part of it before we keep moving on. So I'm going to agree with you off the bat that I do think that society, culture, and family play significant roles in what we believe. That I didn't say that was wrong. The only thing that I said to you is now when I evaluate new claims, I make my best effort to use axiomatic humanism as opposed to those traditionalist cultural values. And even if I sometimes fail, that's not relevant to my self-identification as an axiomatic humanist. Does that make sense to you?
Listen, and I can agree with you. We do have different ways of analyzing our world after we get to a certain age, and we start thinking more for ourselves, which you're doing now.
Agreed.
And
yeah,
you're right. I mean, because our cultural norms that we sometimes collectively or individually decide are not right outside of our programming, and that's when people are waking up and having independent thought. So I'm not against independent thought. I'm not against people picking a chosen philosophical worldview upon which they use a methodology to determine right and wrong. My point was simply saying, though, the basics of right and wrong that we believe when it comes to murder and rape, things that we can all agree upon that are, that's kind of wrong. We that's kind of something that's kind of instilled in us, that we're not supposed to steal from people. We're not supposed to hurt other people.
Yeah, Richard, could I try to meet you halfway really quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what I want to say is I think your point is well taken. I think it is exactly correct that family, culture, and preconceived notions influence our worldview. I guess I would ask you if we could meet halfway. That is the foundation for how we think in the beginning, but we should strive towards independent, non-biased thought when experiencing new conclusions in the adult and real world. Does that make sense to you, Richard?
Well, I think that we should always be willing to take in new information and be willing to change positions or to come to new positions. But I think that also is something that I'm going to say is something that has happened in humanity through all of recorded history that we know. That's a generational story of humanity. I mean, that's how we've gotten to the society we are at. There were societies that existed before us that we would think are barbaric in many ways. And as time went, people started challenging social norms, be it Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Augustine, or the religious figures that people believe in from time to time, Jesus or Muhammad, or people like Dr. King or Malcolm X. So that is something, a society that changes. I look at humanity as a story. All right. And as that story goes, it progresses and it changes because people do think outside the box and think about things in a different way, or think about how to deal with our world in a different way, how to interact with our world in a different way. So I think that is the evolution of us as individuals and us as a race.
Hey, Richard, quick question for you from an audience member.
Yeah.
How do you explain the fact that crime rates are generally lower in secular countries? There is obviously no God needed there.
Is that me or him?
Well,
No, that's for him.
Okay.
For me, well, one, I didn't make the argument. I can't argue a straw man, and I'm not making the argument that God is the reason for morality or rule of law. And secondly, I don't know of any countries that were not at some point, especially Western countries, because I can only think the only type of secular countries I can hear you speaking of are certain Western countries. There are no Western countries that are without the influence of Christianity as a historical and a philosophical force. Whether there's a God or not is inconsequential to that. It really doesn't matter. If God exists or if God doesn't exist is not consequential to the reality of the institutions of Christianity having the effect it had on Western society after the Middle Ages, through the Renaissance, and particularly the Enlightenment, which brings us to where we're at right now. So those things happen. We can't unhappen those things. We can't go back.
So really quick, Richard, would you agree with me in general that Enlightenment values in places, historically speaking, were directly a response to fundamentalist values that mainly Christians purported?
Well, I think that is kind of how should I say this? That is a statement that doesn't take into account the reality of the Enlightenment or the Renaissance before it or the Middle Ages. I think you can't take the Enlightenment outside of the context of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. And the reality of the situation is after the Roman Empire fell, Christianity was a primary institutional force and cultural force that sustained academic thought, philosophical thought within Western society.
Okay,
now,
so this is, I have to stop you because I actually genuinely disagree in the sense that if we look historically at Christianity's role in the world, we have to take one thing into account, which is the majority of institutions in general, not just academic, were Christian by necessity because churches had so much power. So the idea that Christianity played a major role in academic scholarship simply because they were the majority is like making the claim that in the Islamic Golden Age, Islam was the foundational function in creating Islamic scholars for science and mathematics. The religion wasn't what caused it. It was a byproduct of a society that was already primarily religious.
I would have to disagree with you on this. All right. One, after the Roman Empire fell, I will agree with you as far as matters of state were definitely handled by the church until, some of the thinkers like Sir Thomas Aquinas and others started questioning the idea of separating the papacy from actually the affairs of state. And they were trying to have somewhat of a balance there. And they were working that out, which is how we end up with the ideas of the separation of church and state that come in the Enlightenment. Because these ideas began during the Middle Ages.
But Thomas Aquinas didn't draw on his Christianity to demonstrate a separation of church and state. That's the point I'm making to you.
But to the idea of academics, no, it's categorically incorrect. And what I'm going to say about that is the whole university system in Western Europe was established by the Christian church. The knowledge base, contrary to what some people assert, the knowledge base of the books of the earlier philosophies was held by the church. The theology.
This is definitely a shaky framing. I don't mean to interrupt you, Richard, but I want to make sure this is a dialogue, right? So when we're talking about things like religious institutions starting academia, it's important to do two things, which is acknowledge that the majority of the populace inside those societies were primarily religious and would give money to religious institutions at higher rates. And that's why religious institutions were able to dominate academia for so long. The fact that academia was religious is not, in fact, relevant at all to Christian roots inside of academia. It's incidental to the population.
All right, but see, here's the problem. You're getting atheist defensive, and let me explain what I mean by that.
I'm presenting you my counter argument. It isn't an atheist argument.
I'm not saying that religious, how should I say this? I'm not making the argument that religion dominated all the academic world. My position is that because of the Christian church starting the university systems, the Catholic churches particularly, starting because there were not the Protestant churches that we have now at that particular time, that was the foundation of the university system. In other words, you wouldn't have a university system if it was not founded that way, because the only thing that survived through the Middle Ages in order to push that issue. And from that, yes, I'm a historian. The discipline of being a historian.
I can tell you are. You know a lot about this.
Right. The discipline of history comes directly from the discipline of theology. Now, of course, it's separated and it's its own thing now. All right. Just like psychology comes from philosophy. They're separate things now. All right. Philosophy comes from theology. All right. But they're separate things now. So these things evolve. I'm saying foundationally you have one thing. As it evolves, yeah, of course, now you have all kinds of disciplines that are not related to religious subject matter or religious things, and that's a good thing. But I'm saying that it cannot be dismissed that because of the Christian church and the fact that it endured past Rome's fall, that gave an establishment that we built upon as a society. And
okay.
And that is not
hold on. Before I let you continue, because you said it cannot be dismissed, it absolutely can be dismissed. And I'll tell you one reason why it can be dismissed. The reason why we can dismiss Christian influence in academia and the foundations of the Roman Catholic Empire is because if the Catholic Empire were to be replaced by modern day Protestantism, the same thing would have occurred. It's not a result of religion, it's a result of cultural buildings in different academic spaces. It has nothing to do with the teachings of Catholicism or the foundation. It's an incidental consequence of the dominance of Catholicism in that region. So yes, we can in fact dismiss the religious ties.
Right. Well, I hear what you're saying, but there's one word to use that makes your argument inconsequential, and the word is if. If Pharaoh Amenhotep had a group of M16s and a group of Marines fighting for him, the world might look different.
No, that's ridiculous, right? That's a false analogy because all I did was take your example and provide a different religion.
If King Henry VIII had got the divorce he was trying to get, and England remained Catholic and didn't go Protestant, we can make the argument the whole world will look different now. If the United Kingdom had remained a Catholic
country, we don't have to straw man. We can address what I said, which is that. Hold on, Richard. I'm going to stop you for a moment because I need to get this point in. There's no reason to extrapolate it to King Tutankhamun. There's no reason to extrapolate it to King Henry III's wife. There's no reason to demonstrate it that way. Just address my actual point, which is if Catholicism would have been replaced by any other religion, we would have had the same results because it wasn't religious.
No, we don't.
Richard,
no, you can't.
We've let you speak a lot. Allow Christian to finish.
Go ahead, Christian, finish.
So it's really simple. I'm not even disagreeing with the fact that the Catholic Church founded these academic institutions. The only point that I'm raising to you is the actual religiosity of those people is not relevant because we could replace Catholicism with Protestantism or Islam and get similar results because it was based on a cultural norm, not a religious norm.
Okay. Are you finished?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I'm finished. Yeah.
Again, my point was if we can try, as historians, a lot of times we go, if this happened, what would have happened? Well, first, there could not be any Protestantism because if there was no Catholicism, there would be no Protestantism. And I'm not a Catholic.
That's why it's a hypothetical.
Out to the church. So again,
that's why it's a hypothetical.
Not a matter of, we can say if on a lot of things, but we don't know what
that's why it's a hypothetical.
Right? That's a hypothetical. And I'm saying exactly that from the very beginning. It doesn't matter hypothetical ways we go with this. This is the course of human history. This is what happened. And because of these things, they had consequences. And those consequences were built upon to bring us to where we are now.
Okay.
So because the church
but you're not addressing what I said, Richard. You're not addressing what I said. What I asked you was to demonstrate why Catholicism, if it would have been Islam or any other religion, why was Catholicism necessarily the religion that caused this? Or was it a cultural phenomenon based on the majority of people in that age already being religious? I need a demonstration of that.
Okay, and I guess I'm not making the argument that you're arguing against. I'm not saying it needed to be anything. I'm saying what it was. And that's all there is to it. This is what happened. I'm not saying it needed to happen that way. I'm saying that it happened that way. It's very different to say this needed to happen and saying this is what happened. I'm saying that is what happened. Now we can sit here and theorize what would have looked like if Islam had been a dominant religious force in that particular culture and society. We could theorize if it was Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism. We could theorize all
So, Richard, the only point that I made in response to what you've said this entire time, I've not even questioned the historicity of your claims. All I've said was that if you're just going to assert historical fact, I'm trying to provide some sort of context so the audience can actually engage in an actual discussion. But because at this point we're just citing historical fact, I think we're going to try to move on.
Okay, well, that's fair enough because, like I said, we can't sit here and speculate. I mean, that's a different conversation. I'm simply saying that no matter what your worldview is, atheist, agnostic, believer, non-believer, Protestant, Catholic, whatever, at the end of the day, what happened to bring us here is what happened to bring us here. The influence of
Yes, and what I'm saying is citing historical fact is totally cool, and I respect your knowledge, but it's not what the show's about. So at this point, we're going to have to go to a different caller.
Sorry.
Thank you, Richard.
And Ethan, I apologize. We kind of went there. I apologize. Overall, I called specifically about, as far as the cultural, how societies inform how people think, which we came to an agreement upon. And as far as Christianity being obviously a force in Western society, I think we have to agree that it was, and that's pretty much the point I was making. So
right.
Thank you very much.
In, Richard. Have a good day.
Bye, Richard.
All right.
Christian. Come on, can we get a round of applause for Christian? Like,
I'm exercising my godly patience.
You're awesome, man. Major props to you.
I don't know how Matt does this every week. I would go insane. I would literally go insane.
I can see you like.
Well, the thing is, and no disrespect to Richard, because the conversation was really interesting from a historical perspective. But when we're having a show and it's a dialogue, at the point where I'm talking for 20 seconds and Richard's talking for 15 minutes, it starts to become a really tough conversation to have. And I saw the chat was giving me praise. I really appreciate it. It's my first time doing a call-in show, so I appreciate everyone giving me some pointers and help. But
not that I'm the one to say who a pro is, but you're a pro, man. And I look forward to seeing you grow within the community. So we have our next caller. They are calling about a spirit. So, Brandon, you are on the air with Christian and Ethan. How you doing?
You jackass. Anyway.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I've been there, done that one. My first experience was actually, we were playing with the Ouija board, and lo and behold, everything went out in our house, and nothing in any other house. So, yeah.
And
it was bad.
And what happened when you played with the Ouija board?
You said all the lights went out in your house?
Yep. All the lights.
So I would assume that the only conclusion you could draw from that is that the lights went out in your house because of the Ouija board. Is that the conclusion you're drawing from that?
Well, yeah, considering that we went down and checked the actual circuit breaker, nothing was flipped.
So how would you demonstrate the causal relationship between a Ouija board and lights going off? How would that work scientifically or in any way at all, I guess?
To make it more simple, how did you jump to the conclusion that it's a spirit and not just an accident? Or, I'm sorry, not just a coincidence.
I heard him in the background.
You heard what in the background?
I heard him in the background.
Oh, someone said him?
No, he said, how would you conclude it was a spirit or just...
Oh, me? No, I didn't say that. I just said, how would you demonstrate that the Ouija board caused the lights going off?
Well, we asked for the spirit to be there, and evidently it was there.
Well, so the issue with that is that when you have two independent instances of things occurring and you say it has to be causal relationships, that's not true at all. There could be external circumstances that we can't control for. So if you could provide some sort of way that we could test the Ouija board to the lights turning off, that would be awesome. But until then, it's just hearsay and hypothesis making, which isn't science, and it also isn't demonstratable.
Okay.
So, do you understand where where Christian's coming from? So, what we're essentially, what I think he is essentially saying is, there's no way for us to investigate it being a spirit. So, why accept that it actually was a spirit?
Oh,
as opposed to just
he's saying that it was a spirit?
I sorry, Brandon, you did say it was a spirit. Is that correct, or am I misrepresenting you?
That would be correct.
So now we've gotten one step worse, because not only are you saying that the Ouija board caused the lights going out, but that it was a spirit. So there's an additional level of causality we'd have to demonstrate until causality, not causality, that we could demonstrate. Otherwise, I don't know how you got to spirit. How did you rule out all other possibilities? How did you come to that conclusion independent of inquiry and study?
Because everything went off and nobody was here.
Would you be willing to accept that the possibility that it was just a coincidence and it wasn't a spirit?
It would be, but I seriously think it was spirit.
Well, I don't doubt that you seriously think that. I guess the question I'm asking is, we can think things are true or be convinced that things are true that are actually not true. So in the absence of a way to demonstrate or a way to logically conclude that it must have been, in fact, a spirit or, in fact, a supernatural phenomena, I don't know how you came to that conclusion without some sort of cognitive biases. Do you have any way to get me there?
At the moment, no.
Okay, so could we reframe it this way and say there was lights that went off after something happened with the Ouija board, and we have no good reasons to say that it was a spirit, but you're just theorizing and saying that it could have been a spirit. Is that fair?
Yes.
I can dig that.
Sweet. Well, thanks for calling in, Brandon.
All right, Brandon, who's in the background?
Christian, the other guy on the air with
Yeah, Christian, hi, how are you?
and he disconnected. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Good.
Good job. All right. Cool. Moving on to our next caller. It looks like we have the self-proclaimed Pope of Atheism. Arthur, you're on the air with Christian and Ethan. How you doing? Arthur?
Arthur, hello.
Arthur, check 1 2, check 1 2. All right. Well, Arthur disconnected.
Recall if you want to, Arthur. Yeah.
Yeah. Call us back in. Cool. And it right now is the perfect chance to like and subscribe. Also, thank you to my top patrons, Kenneth Leonard, Trina Deluca, Cindy PLAZA, and Christian Watkins.
I do my bit.
Yeah. Pretty nice, dude. All right. It looks like he is called back, hopefully. Let's see. Arthur, are you there?
Yes. I'm there now. You had cut me off before.
We couldn't hear you. You're on the phone with Christian and Ethan. How you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. How are you today?
Doing well. What do you got for us?
All right. Well, you know what? I want to ask Christian, first of all, what is he going to school for? Because he sounds like he could be a lawyer.
I'm nowhere near bold enough to
That's
do
number
law.
one. What'd you say?
I'm nowhere bold enough to do law, but I am going into evolutionary biology.
Oh, okay. Is this Christian I'm talking to now?
Yeah.
Okay, Christian, how are you doing? It's nice meeting you. Now, I will tell you this. I'm what you might call a 99%er. Because of the fact that I can't know everything, I'm 99% sure that there is no God. And whenever people, like let's say yourself, or people like William Lane Craig, they get on the air and they have all this intellectual horsepower to explain something that shouldn't require any more intellect than pointing out on the table that there's an apple sitting there, and we all know that it exists. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Did you say myself and William Lane Craig?
What'd you say? No, I'm just saying that some at certain points in your back and forth with others on the line, it kind of reminded me of that. I'll give you a little bit of a story how I came to a conclusion that there probably is no God. Now, I'm advanced age. I'm 64 years old. I'm growing up in the middle of the civil rights movement. And as you probably know, Black people have a lot of investment and faith in Christianity and God. One day I'm looking at Martin Luther King getting his head knocked off on television. And I turned around my grandmother and said, "Where is God?" And I'm asking this question because it seemed like Black people were putting all of this energy, investment, time, and so forth, but no concrete response in terms of uplifting them and making their lives better. It's like God doesn't know us. God doesn't, we're kind of like the last on his priority list. And then when my grandmother became concerned about my grounding in and belief in God, she took me to a church elder, and that church elder challenged me to read the Bible. I read the Bible from cover to cover. And by the age of 14, I said, no, I can't do this. There is no God. This Bible is too ridiculous, and nobody can convince me otherwise. And I've been that way ever since. Well, how could you convince me otherwise?
I don't think I want to. I mean,
I don't want to convince you otherwise either, man.
Why not?
Because I want you to stay an atheist.
I do too.
The world needs more of us. That's
I'm-
Why is that? Why do you feel that?
Why do I think the world needs more of us?
No, yeah, exactly. Why do you feel there should be more atheists?
So I feel that Christianity has been given a preferential treatment in America, and I think many people follow it without good reason. I'm not saying everybody doesn't have good reason. I'm just saying that I don't think many people have good reason to believe in a God. And unfortunately, people use this belief in, I would equate it to me walking up to somebody and saying, I don't like that you're doing this because this invisible being right next to me says I can't. And therefore, I'm going to make legislation to limit your rights, all because of this little thing right here that you can't even see. And it drives me absolutely bonkers. So I think we need more people fighting against that, because religion at many times is the enemy of science.
All right. Well, you know, there was a great. I thought it was pretty good. There was a very good debational dance between Christian and Richard, and you guys are going back and forth. And you know what I had to do with the Bible, and what I had to do with even the notion of God, I had to take it out of the context of culture and history and put it solidly into the category of an explanation. Is this explanation of the cosmos, this planet, and how life works the proper one? When I came to the conclusion that in 3,000 years, we came to understand better explanations, this is at the point where I had to just keep that book in its historical context and understanding this is how people thought 3,000 years ago, and I never went back since. Now, ironically, I have the whole 15 Bibles.
Really?
I have
from
27.
different translations, different, from different denominations. And the reason why is because I want to be, I keep myself very well versed in Christianity because that's what this particular society is based upon. And my goal is always to understand society so I can navigate better within it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
But again, that was a very interesting exchange between you and Richard. Basically, that's all I wanted to say, and I really thank you for the dialogue.
Thank you for calling in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice talking to the Pope of Atheism. I love that name. I think.
Yes.
Thanks for calling in, Arthur. It was nice talking to you.
No problem.
Bye, Arthur.
So far, we've been pretty lucky. We've had some good calls. Although I feel like there needs to be at some point down the line, I would love to see you and Richard debate. A friendly debate, though, of course.
So no, I would be willing to do something like that for sure.
Cool. So if we have no more callers, unfortunately, I was waiting on if we can keep this going for just a few more minutes, the legendary Dean Meadows is going to call in and talk to you. So we just need a bridge a few minute gap.
I can bridge the gap for a moment. I know that I said that I own 27 Bibles.
Yes, explain that.
So I have always been pretty fanatical about reading scripture. Even when I was a Christian, I was especially fanatical. But I've gotten lots of them at garage sales and a couple at a couple that I've collected from different churches. And I have a whole collection that I'm building up, not because, I'm secretly divulging in Christian morality. It's always nice to have a constant reminder that there are other viewpoints than mine, and I want to be challenged constantly. And having such a blatant reminder of that it keeps me honest. It keeps me skeptical. It keeps me, intellectually rigorous in my analysis by knowing that there's a whole bunch of things that I still have left to learn, even in that one book alone. So
I'm actually surprised by this. One of my favorite atheists just said she hasn't read a Bible. That totally surprises me.
I guess so. When you're an atheist, you don't necessarily have to read the Bible, but if you want to argue with Christians, you probably should be at least biblically literate to argue with them. But if you're just an atheist with a lack of belief, I'm not going to say you're forced to read any book. I know that my knowledge on the Quran is significantly lacking compared to my knowledge on the Bible, and I'm trying to fix that now. I have a couple copies over there, but.
Speaking of which, tomorrow is going to be the Death with Dignity Roundtable. I'll be joined by Sassy Heathen, Dave Warnock, Aaron, Catalina, and Craig Reed. So we have a nice mix of people who do not believe in death with dignity and people who do. So I'm pretty excited about that. If you have not yet become a patron, the link is in the description to do that. Or if you like the show and just want to support it, there is a link for I forget what it's called, buy us a coffee thing. Yeah, that thing. Christian, so what else you got going on?
Besides the Damn Show appearance tomorrow, I'm launching my YouTube channel where we're going to, read through scripture. We'll talk about different arguments for and against God, provide evidence for and against the contrary. And I'll host interviews with other atheists, and I'll do these often, some call-in shows, I'm sure. I hope I haven't been too bad at it for my first try, but
are you kidding me, dude?
Hopefully with more experience, it'll get significantly smoother and significantly more rigorous in my intellect. But I appreciate everyone bearing with me. And then obviously with my biology degree, I'll talk about evolution and provide some tools for people to argue the case for evolution. So
I'm hesitant to compliment you too much because I don't want you to get an ego early on, but you're doing really good, man.
I hate egos. I detest people with them. So.
Well, sweet. Dean hasn't made it, so I really hate to end the show right now because I think it's been really productive, but at the same time, I'm not going to just ramble for.
Okay, really quickly, I want to give it like another minute because I've been waiting for it seems like generations to speak to Dean, and if I don't get a chance to talk about his moral view, I'm gonna like be a loose cannon for the rest of the night, telling people that, you know, God doesn't exist and all that stuff. But
He just messaged me and said he's about to call. So
okay.
I'm excited. I really, honestly, I at one point want to see you two debate or have a friendly debate on my channel. I think that would be a really good discussion. And also, everyone, thanks for tuning in and checking out. This is our second week doing it. You will occasionally hear some background noise notifications. It's because of the way I have this set up. I'm still learning and handling everything on this one single computer. So bear with me. If you do hear a notification, just let me know in the comments because I'm muting them as I realize that I've missed.
Trial and error.
It is. And rather than sit here and wait for all the kinks to work out, I just like, let's just do it. But without further ado,
Let's go. I'm so excited.
I'm excited. Calling in from the Daily Apologist is
Dean, I love you.
Dean Meadows.
I love you, Dean. I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, I'm excited for it too, and I just want to echo what Ethan has said, is that you're a very impressive young gentleman, Christian. I appreciate the call. 1 second, let me just go ahead and turn down the volume on my computer because I don't want it to
That's
echo.
very kind of you, Dean. Thank you.
All right. And then I will put this here. Sorry, I'm running around. I got kids going everywhere. I'm making dinner for my wife because I'm a good husband. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
I bet. You seem like you would be.
So, yeah, man. Let's chat. So one of the things, if I can kind of open up a little bit, and I agree with Ethan, I would love at some point in the future to do a friendly dialogue on his channel. I've done a couple with Kenneth, and I'd love to just.
I've watched them all. They were great.
The dialogue that at some point. So cool. So one of the things I want to talk about is I think the last time that we engaged indirectly was on morality. And so I guess my first question would be, you said that you are a axiomatic humanist, correct?
Yeah.
So explain to me what in the world that is.
Yeah, so it's basically just a slight reframing of the classic well-being suffering paradigm, which is we agree upon a few axiomatic principles, and then from there we can make informed assessments of what we should and should not do in social moral situations. And based on those axioms, the general ones would be well-being, suffering, the involuntary imposition of will is bad. Those sorts of things would be the axioms. And then I make the additional claim that all moral systems, regardless of who they're proposed by or what religion they're attached to, are necessarily subjective in the agreement. And we can make pseudo-objective statements on informed bases from that point forward.
So then there's no overarching objective truth when it comes to moral propositions.
I don't even know how you can demonstrate that, so no.
So there's no objective, or excuse me, so it's just a subjective agreement between two people or two cultures or a group of people within one culture, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Because
so it can be that, and usually what I would advocate for is abandoning moral systems that advocate for things that go against my axioms that we can potentially agree upon. But as far as like a religious moral system, I would say it's necessarily at least as subjective. I would argue even more subjective than a secular system.
Right. So you're saying that those morals, those axioms that we're going to agree on, you're going to propose those that someone would potentially agree with you, but they don't necessarily have to agree.
Yeah, just like someone doesn't have to believe in God or believe in the Bible, which is I believe, your worldview. They're both subjective in the same way. So if someone believes in God or believes in the Bible as inerrant, that would be a subjective position on a set of issues, just like my axioms are a subjective assessment of the axioms of which we would determine morality with. They're both subjective premises, correct?
Well, what I'm trying to get at is how is it that you can have subjective moral values and duties and then classify certain things that you may disagree with, whether that's in culture, whether that's in religion. It doesn't have to be Christianity. It could be any religion. And say, okay, well, that is wrong. It seems like to me.
Sure, you would say that murder's wrong, right? Just that would you say that murder's wrong,
What?
Dean? Would you say murder's wrong in your worldview?
Right, I would agree that murder is wrong.
And you're just that's so
Right,
that was
I
only
think
part of the
murder
question
is
that I wanted to get. There's a follow-up. There's a line of thinking I want to get down, which is if you were to say that morality is wrong and your basis for that is the Bible, commandments, and I were to say perhaps I agree with you, but for different reasons. Either way, we're both making subjective statements based on conclusions we've drawn on our subjective worldviews.
Right. I see where you're coming from with that. But what I'm trying to propose is that while you might say that these are subjective things, and while you might say that certain moral propositions are subjective and merely based on agreement, that
just like yours, correct?
That you could, I don't know that you could ultimately say, or I don't even know if I want to use the word objectively, because these are just pseudo-objective things on your worldview. That anything
also yours
really wrong. It's only wrong insofar as this isn't what we.
You believe in the Bible or accept the Bible as true, correct?
Well, I'm saying even if you were to say murder's wrong, if I don't agree with you that
or the
murder's
Bible,
wrong, that's just on what you're proposing and what you're saying on your.
So what you're doing right now is you're taking the painting of morality and saying, can we stick on your side so I don't have to defend why mine isn't subjective?
No.
What I'm explaining to you, if I may, before you go on, Dean, if I may, what I'm saying to you is that agreeing on the Bible being true and Christianity being true or the teachings being true or God existing are all things that we subjectively come to based on other factors. It's just what happens. So by you saying that it's just a matter of agreements in my worldview is completely neglectful, that's also true of yours. The only difference is that you claim an objective high ground, whereas I'm at least honest enough to say that my basis is subjective and we can make informed opinions beyond the axiomatic principles.
So then are you suggesting by claiming that I have an objective high view that I'm being dishonest?
If you do not accept the idea that your moral system is based on subjective agreements about the Bible, then yes, I would say that's dishonest.
Okay. So if I say, so let me hear you correctly. I'm saying, all right, divine command theory is true, that God is the nexus of.
But you can't start there, right? Because in order to get the Christian God, you have to first agree that the Bible is true. What is in the Bible is accurate. It's historically accurate. The Gospels are accurate. The Old Testament is accurate. The Pentateuch is accurate. These are all subjective assessments of the evidence.
No, I don't know that you would have to. I don't necessarily know that you would have to show that the Bible is historically true, or the resurrection took place.
If you wanted to claim the Christian God, yes, you would have to.
That there's a objective moral standard outside yourself that's dictated by a.
If you're saying it's the Christian God,
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
That Christianity is true.
If you're saying it's the Christian God, then yes, you do.
What I'm saying is the moral argument for God's existence traditionally does not rely on whether or not the Bible is true or whether Jesus rose from the dead. I'm not saying that you don't know this. I'm just saying, like, those arguments like teleological, kalam, and moral, those are simply arguments that point to a general deity, right? So you could run potentially
even a general theistic argument for morality is still based on subjective assessments.
Do what?
Even a general theistic argument inside the framework of morality is still necessarily based on subjective agreements, like a God exists. We can know what a God means. We can know what a God says. And you don't get to prescriptions about morality in the absence of at least the God of classical theism. And you have to know what that God of classical theism wants, what it commands. These are all subjective assessments of the evidence that claiming that it's just an objective worldview, but that's not.
I don't understand why I couldn't make, excuse me, a deductive argument about objective moral values and duties and arrive at the conclusion that a God exists without having to agree with anybody else on that syllogism, or just show that, hey, we all believe that these things are objectively true, and therefore ask the question, okay, well, what's the best grounding for these objective facts that we know to be true?
I think we're talking past each other.
That doesn't need to be subjective. That's just something that everybody knows. You can
I think we're talking past each other.
To be objectively true.
What I'm saying is, if your position, which I think I understand it, is that you're making an argument not for Christian morality, but for the traditional theist model. Is that correct?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying to you is, even under the classical definition of theism, that being a personal, timeless, omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent God, that traditional definition of theistic gods still requires subjective assessments of the evidence in order to come to a conclusion that that God exists. We know what that God says. We know what that God wants. Those are still subjective assessments that you have to make subjectively. And you cannot say that it's objective if you have a basis that is entirely contingent on your understanding of the evidence.
Okay, but my point is, when it comes to morality, when it comes to issues of morality, that while I personally have to assess the evidence, I guess that's what you mean by subjectively.
Through a subjective lens, and you're a subjective creature.
Sorry, Dean. Please
continue. Do what?
No. Sorry. Finish what you were saying, Dean.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm trying to key in on what Christian means by subjective assessment. If he's just simply saying that you as a subject, as an individual, have to make an assessment of the evidence, then, well, duh, everybody does that. But that doesn't mean, it doesn't follow from that we can't make objective, that certain propositions aren't objectively true.
Well, the thing is, you're claiming that you have access to propositions that are objectively true, and I'm saying that how you got to that objectivity is necessarily subjective, and I want you to demonstrate why your worldview is different than mine when I say we have subjective assessments of the evidence, of the axioms, and we get to a conclusion about morality that we try to call objective or universal, but we still have two subjective bases that are coming from the same assessment of the evidence that is necessarily subjective. I don't see how our worldviews differ, besides you're claiming that you have divine authority, and I'm saying that it's still a subjective assessment of the evidence, whether or not that God actually exists and what it wants.
Okay, so I don't have to know per se what a specific God wants to know from the argument of morality that he exists. I don't necessarily have to know that what he specifically.
I know you're making the independency argument. You're saying that, if a God exists, it would be irrelevant whether or not we could prove it exists. There would be objective moral values and duties, but that's a hypothetical. What I'm saying is, in our real world right now, we have to address what is actually the justification for believing in such a God. And independent of subjective assessments of the evidence, we cannot come to the conclusion that there's any good reason to believe that these moral teachings in the Bible or anywhere else are true and objective.
Okay, so let me try and demonstrate. So, do you ascribe to the idea that there are certain things, certain actions that for all people, all times, and all cultures are wrong?
Do I think there has been historically a consistency in what has been right and wrong?
Like, what I'm asking is, do you think that there are moral actions that are wrong for all people at all times in all cultures? Yes or no? Do you think that?
Do I think that based on my moral system? Yes.
Do what?
Based on the system that I establish axiomatically, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
I do think that under my axioms, we can call things absolutely wrong. But if your question is there a special realm where morality is objectively prescribed for all of humanity, and then we agree upon that subjective or that objective realm? No, I don't think that. I don't even know how you would demonstrate that to be the case.
Okay, so then that's my point on your worldview. How can you say that something is absolutely wrong for all people, all times, and all places, but then put it in the subjective
under my
realm?
worldview?
I don't know how you. I don't. Well, and I think that's the problem with your worldview. I think on one side,
it's so not to commit a tu quoque fallacy.
But on the other side, you're saying, hey, these are just subjective agreements that we have. And so anytime you come to a moral conflict, when two things butt up against each other, one person's subjective moral, axiomatic stance and, another person's axiomatic, stance, when those two things butt heads, well, how do you adjudicate which person is absolutely wrong here? Is it just a matter of well-being? Is it just a matter of what causes less or more suffering?
So that doesn't really address what I said. So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you, Dean, is that your worldview and my worldview are very similar in the beginning of the moral argument. We both have to agree upon axiomatic principles that necessitate a subjective assessment of the evidence. And all I mean by subjective is that we look at it and we make a decision on what is or is not convincing. You can make a deterministic argument. I'm just going to say for the sake of brevity, we make that decision. So what I'm saying.
Okay, so there I agree with you. There I agree that we both make an assessment of the evidence.
Okay, so what I'm saying from that is that if you agree on my axiomatic principles, it's not just mine, by the way, just axiomatic principles in general of these issues, well-being, suffering, involuntary imposition of will, then we can come to statements that are demonstrably true or demonstrably false based on those axioms. And what I'm saying is, I don't see the differentiation between you saying that once you accept the Bible, once you accept Christianity, once you accept the God of classical theism, you get to a moral basis. I'm not saying that isn't true. What I'm saying is that there's two processes that require the same amount of intellectual understanding that comes into saying that my worldview is axiomatically secular or axiomatically religious, and they're both necessitating a subjective or a personal viewing of the evidence.
Okay, I agree with you that they involve a personal viewing of the evidence. I'm sorry, I misconstrued what you meant by
someone in the comment section said that I was playing fast and loose with subjective. I kind of agree.
I agree that you and I both think that some things are wrong. And I believe that you and I both have to come and look at the evidence and determine whether or not that's right and wrong. I think the issue here, the ultimate issue here is, all right, on what basis or on what grounds do you make such a moral assessment as to whether something is right or something is wrong? What's the grounding for your axiomatic?
So, like I've said before,
right?
Once we accept either religious or secular axiomatic principles, and that's a conversation that can come from convincing through other values, through scientific inquiry, through religious texts. Regardless, all of this is evidence that informs our axiomatic principles. Once we accept those axiomatic principles as true, those axiomatic principles as useful in bringing about moral actions, we can then make assessments that are informed and demonstrably accurate based on those axioms, religious or secular.
Okay. I guess I'm just not following what you're saying, and pardon my ignorance with regards to what you're laying out. So
No, I don't think you're ignorant at all. I think I'm making a point that perhaps you didn't consider, which is that both worldviews they necessitate an agreement through personal evaluation of the evidence on some axiomatic principles. So what I'm saying is that whether religious or secular, you run into the same issue of if you don't agree on the evidence, then how can you demonstrate something is true or reliable or wrong or right? What I'm saying is we have to agree on those axiomatic principles, whether it's the Bible, whether it's secularism, whether it's skepticism, whether it's faith, regardless. We have to agree on these axiomatic principles being true. And the insertion of a God does not change that at all.
So I guess my understanding of this, and I'm trying to consider what you're saying, and once again, I've agreed with you that we agree on certain axiomatic principles within morality. My question is, and still remains, is whether it's theism or whether it's secular humanism or humanism as you've talked about. I still am not sure how you ground what you've talked about. Is it simply, I mean, I'm trying to get there, with you. Is it just a matter of you and I agree on these principles, and because we agree on these principles, therefore we can make some type of moral decision collectively that's for the best interest of you and I and the well-being of others?
So I'll try again. I'll try again. Don't worry. I'll try again. So when we're grounding moral systems, whether secular or religious, and this is the last time that I'll try this, when we're grounding secular or religious systems, we have to have a fundamental agreement on axiomatic principles. Those convincing can come from believing the Bible is historically true, believing the Quran is historically true, believing that skepticism is useful, believing that humanism is good. We can have all of these discussions, but once we agree on a set of axioms and we've done a subjective assessment, at that point, we have the license to say, under that worldview, X is wrong, Y is wrong, X is demonstrably wrong, Y is demonstrably wrong. But you don't escape the issue of why is something objectively wrong by inserting the Christian or just a classical theist worldview, because those worldviews require that we accept certain presuppositions, certain axiomatic principles, in order for those to be objective or true. Does that make sense, Dean?
I think it makes sense to me, but I'm not completely sure.
All right. So what we're gonna have to do
what you're
is,
saying. I think what you're getting at. I think what you're getting at is, if help me if I'm wrong, and maybe we can talk offline about it. I'm certainly open to do that. Is you're saying regardless of secularism or regardless of theism, when we come together, we're going to have to agree on certain moral values and duties.
Certain axiomatic principles that inform those moral actions and duties.
Okay, that inform those moral actions and duties. And then what you're saying is, even if you insert a God into that, you still don't escape the fact that you have to agree on these principles beforehand, these presuppositions beforehand. And nothing about inserting the God makes it objective.
Yes, so far as we have, that's a beautiful summarization. As long as we have to agree on axiomatic truths about the Bible, the Quran, skepticism, whatever, as long as we have to agree on those subjectively, no moral system can escape the grounding problem of axiomatic agreement.
Right. So,
all right,
so then my question is, what if I don't?
Last question, Dean. Go ahead.
Do what?
Last question, then we got to wrap it up. Go ahead, Dean.
Oh, okay. I guess my next question would be, well, what if I don't even come to the table and say, I don't even presuppose that something like the Bible or the Quran is historically accurate or true? What if I come to the table and say, all right, regardless of whatever religious text I have, I can intuitively see that torturing a baby for fun is wrong. Do you agree with that? And you say, okay, yes, I agree with that. I haven't inserted the Bible. I haven't inserted the Quran.
Well, you
My
can say,
question is,
Dean,
where
you
do
can
I-
say things are intuitively wrong, but you can be incorrect. The vast majority of people in history may have
Right.
thought that it's intuitively wrong, that it's intuitively right for people to be enslaved, or that it's intuitively right for gay individuals to not have any rights. Your intuition is
But that
totally
doesn't
valid as far as a
no,
premise, but we have to
but
do
that doesn't
more than just say it is an intuition.
you're right or wrong morally.
What'd you say, Dean? You were talking while I was talking.
Just because you have some example in history of people acting intuitively wrong doesn't mean that in certain moral cases we can't just see things intuitively and know that they're wrong. I mean,
I'm saying it isn't sufficient to use intuition.
Morality.
What I'm saying is intuition is not a consistently demonstratable path to what is morally right, because our intuitions can be wrong.
All right, and on that
Okay.
note, we do have to end the show. Dean, real quick, where can everyone check you out at?
TheDailyApologist.com. YouTube channel is The Daily Apologist. Instagram is also The Daily Apologist. Everything The Daily Apologist, you can find me there. And I think that this is a great starter for a debate at some point with Christian on objective moral values and duties. Sorry, I wasn't catching the cue there about what you're trying to explain, but I think there at the end I got a hold of it.
It's okay.
No, you're fine, Dean. Always a pleasure.
I'm going to keep pestering you because I am going to bring you to the dark, Dean. Don't you worry.
We will see. Hey, I'm open to it. If Christianity is not true, I don't want to be a Christian.
Good. That's what I like to
And I didn't
hear,
mean that
Dean.
as a pun. I didn't mean that as a pun towards Christians.
I know. I didn't take it like that anyway. All right. Well, thank you for calling in. I appreciate it.
All right, later, guys.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good night, Dean.
Christian, good first show, man. Although I could see the frustration on your face several times throughout the entirety of it. So what'd you think? How was it?
I had a lot of fun. I mean, I'm exploring these ideas myself, presenting what I think, and hoping every day I can be wrong so I can learn more. So at the point where I can have these conversations with people, it's been an absolute pleasure. Chad has been amazing. I appreciate some of the praise, but I even more appreciate the criticism. I definitely saw the criticism, and I'll do better to get better at this and provide perhaps better reasoning. But I hope everyone had enjoyed, and it's been a real honor to be on with Ethan. And I hope that you'll check me out tomorrow on the damn show. So.
Also, thank you to my top tier patrons, which I did thank early in the video, but I'll thank them again: Trina Deluca, Kenneth Leonard, Cindy PLAZA, and one Christian Watkins. So each and every week, what I'm going to be doing is bringing on rotating co-hosts. Yes, even sometimes I'll have a Christian co-host. Not that Christian.
Not me, though.
Because I'm not trying to do what everyone else is doing with call-in shows. I don't want people to get – I don't want things to get stale with it being the same thing each and every week. I want to appeal to a larger audience and I don't know, do some more fun stuff. Anyways, real quick, Trina did tag me in the video. So if you give me 1 second, I can –
Oh, I'm excited for this.
I hope everyone will be able to hear it. But bear with me. I'm doing this on the fly. Let me make sure I don't have any inappropriate tabs open. Okay. No appropriate tabs. We're good there.
Oh,
okay.
boy.
Oh, yep. This is Trina's, I believe, daughter and the ghost. Or sorry, spirit, whatever you want to call it.
No, nothing. Here, you can sit there. Fingers. Yeah, fingers. Careful. You know what? I'm gonna sit. Go back.
Who are you talking to?
All right, what'd you think, Christian?
Who are you talking to?
What was I supposed to hear?
Allegedly there was a voice saying like hello or hi, and the daughter was talking to that voice the entire time. So
Okay. I mean, I guess my only thoughts on that, Trina, would be if we heard a voice, the only conclusion we could draw from that is that there was an echoey voice. And if that's your conclusion, then sure. And I'd actually want to investigate this somewhere further with like, what could we possibly explain this by through some sort of scientific inquiry? But until then, it was a really interesting video, and it seems like there's a lot to investigate there. So I hope that someday either you'll do an experiment or someone will on this particular phenomena. But I appreciate the video. It was really interesting.
Awesome. Well, I just tagged you in it. Everyone like and subscribe. In 24 minutes, we'll be going live again on an episode of What the Puck with V. La Bianca, and What the Puck is cancel culture, which I'm excited about because I feel like cancel culture is one day going to impact me. Because
let's let me leave before we get onto this. I just want to talk religion, man. I don't want to get into politics right now.
Well, we're not getting into politics. So anyways, thanks for doing this. Don't disconnect. Everyone, thanks for tuning in, and stay safe. Have a good night. All that good stuff.